Because of our limited time, we're not going to show you. Are we going to show the video, Steve? Steve, are we going to show the video for targeting? The video is I am American, I am a Canadian. Targeting, are we going to show it? Okay. Can we show the video as even people coming in? Our next module class is about targeting, okay? The target group, the context of our ministry.
I don't live in an igloo or eat blubber or on a dog sled. And I don't know Jimmy, Sally, or Susie from Canada, although I'm certain they're really, really nice. I have a prime minister, not a president. I speak English and French, not American, and I pronounce it about, not about. I can proudly sew my country's flag on my backpack. I believe in peacekeeping, not police. Diversity, not assimilation. And that the beaver is a truly proud and noble animal. The truth is a hat that takes a field equal coat and remains pronounced dead. Not dead. Canada is the second largest land mass. The first big hockey and the best part of North America. My name is Joe, and I am Canadian.
Okay. Can't find a video about your people, so we'll just use the ones that we have. But you know our heart. Anyway, so we are on the third module on this section. Daniel talked about the mission last night. Steve talked about core values. And we're going to talk about the target group. So let's have a short review here. The mission statement must come out from the Bible, and there are similarities in our mission statement because it's based on the Bible. We put it differently, words are different, but the message is the same. We would like to preach the gospel, disciple people, win people to Christ. And then the core values is that we look into the mirror and we ask ourselves, who are we? What are the most important values that we have? And as Steve said, there are unspoken values, but it's dictating our behaviors. There are aspirational values that we would like to reach. These are important, and so sometimes conflicts come in. So those are the two important things that we have discussed already. And now, after we look into the Bible, we look in the mirror, now we go to our windows, and then we look outside, And we ask ourselves, who has God called us to reach? If we're going to plant this church in the center of this city, who are the people that we are going to reach? Okay, if we're going to plant a church, let's say in the farm in the province, who are the people working there, living there? I like the video that was shown because America is so diverse now. Where we live, San Francisco area, there's a lot of diversity. In the public school, in the San Francisco School District, there are 117 dialects or languages. And so there's a lot of people, and we ask the question, who are the people that God is calling us to reach? And so that is the question that you need to ask. What is our ministry context? Oftentimes we take it for granted and we'll just say, because I came from that place, I speak the language, we know the people, no? And without really studying it, without really understanding it, we miss sometimes the relevant ministries that we should be creating because we somehow take it for granted. It is very important that we understand our community. And based on 1 Chronicles chapter 12, verse 32, we call it the Issachar wisdom. And in that text, it says that the Issachar men knew and understand time, and they know what to do. Okay? They knew the time, and they know what to do. Again, as I have said in my context, all of a sudden, 5 years ago, our target was young family when we started 18 years ago. But 5 years ago, all of a sudden, a lot of grandparents attended our church. Okay? A lot of grandparents. And so we started, before we don't have any ministry to the grandparents, and now we started to have ministry with them. But one thing, again, as I've said 2 or 3 years ago, all of a sudden I just noticed, I stand up as I preach, everybody has an iPad and phone. When I say open our Bibles, no, it's not relevant anymore when we say open your Bibles. It's more like turn on your Bibles to the book of John. That is the term now. It's not open your Bible, but turn on your Bibles to the book of John. And side by side, they will have my sermon outlines, and then because that is the context that we find ourselves. But what is so important is, again, as I've said, what is the good news for your target group? What is the good news for your target group? If you are ministering to poverty-stricken context, what would be the gospel for them? Yes, Steve.
Different people groups have different gospels.
Are you asking me or are you asking them?
I'm asking you.
Oh, me? Okay.
What is the gospel?
You know that I don't know the answer, right? It's like I'm stalling it. So, can you ask the question again?
Let me just say something.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Let me just say something that might clarify.
Sure.
I don't want it to be thought that we have different gospels.
No, it's not, of course.
What aspect of the gospel is most likely to bridge into their mind and heart so that they will consider it?
Yes.
Okay?
Like I've told you that for us, the word gospel for us, the synonyms in America, I think it's ransom or being saved. But for Filipinos, the word is wholeness because we've been broken. And so what appeals to us is not ransom, it's not being saved, it's wholeness for us. And so you need to do a lot of ministry in building up who the person is in terms of poverty, in terms of identity, in terms of healing. And so that to us,
Frame the gospel.
within that context.
Ultimately, it's the same gospel.
It is the gospel. We're just emphasizing what is, for example, needed so that it will become relevant. We're just discussing this morning that in an African American context, 70+% are abandoned by men. And so it's the women and the grandmother that are raising them. And so for you to emphasize that God is the father, they don't understand that. Because they've been abandoned, they've been taken advantage and even violated by human fathers. And so for you to say God is the father, they don't have a context of that. For us Filipinos, a lot of immigrants are going to like working abroad in Saudi Arabia, in Singapore, in Japan. And so they are raised by mothers, not fathers. And so for you to tell us that the God in heaven is our father, it's like you don't relate with us. But if you say God is has a feminine side, then we'll understand. That's why worship of Mary in the Philippines is so strong because of that. Yeah, and I think in your context you have the same thing. No. And so, what is the gospel for your target group? Don't take that for granted. And it takes a lot for you to define it. You must know the people, right? How do you define your target group? Geographically, you'll say, I'll plant a church in the east side of the city. So that's the geographical context of your ministry. Second is demographically and culturally. What are people like in your community? Are they rich, poor, educated, young, old, city dwellers, rural, immigrant, local background? It was easy for me because I'm reaching the immigrant Filipinos, Americans in my context. But still I have to study them. What we have understood is that the farther the country is, for example, Philippines from America, the more educated the immigrants are. And so in my ministry, in my church right now, everybody graduated from college, and half has a master's degree, and even PhD. So that's how intellectually or educated they are. But if you go to a Latino church, it's different. You go to an Asian church, Chinese church, it's very different. The Korean, it's very different as well. Okay. So what is the demographic context and the cultural context that you have? And third, spiritually, religiously speaking, are they Roman Catholic? And so, for example, we will have an evangelistic event, and I will always tell, for example, when an invited speaker and say, do not say anything against the Roman Catholic, because half of the people, or even more than that, are Roman Catholic who are attending. You will be offending them if you do that. And so, do not say anything against it, okay? And so, what are the church background? And for us, very unique. I don't know here, but even though it is predominantly Roman Catholic, it's only the outside. But inside the surface, it's animism. So we believe we have a very strong superstitious belief in the Philippines. Strong will come in and say, oh, maybe our dead father is visiting us. That's common. Yeah. A black cat will cross and will say, oh, let's not go that way because it will be a bad omen. We go another street. Okay. So it's spiritually. And I found out in America, it's the same thing actually. Yeah. I met women, people there who intellectually do not believe in ghosts, but they are afraid of ghosts. See? You see the core value there? Yeah? My wife dragged me one time. We're going to get a loan from a bank, and this woman. Well, that was Monday, my day off. I was not angry, but I was bored, so I wasn't saying anything, any word. Okay, and then the woman said, "Okay, this is how much you're going to pay on a monthly basis." Every time she printed it, it will come out quarterly, not monthly. So she tried it again. The third time, it's the same thing. And then I spoke very quietly so that she will listen to me. For the first time, and I said, I know what's happening here. And she said, what? There's a ghost in your room. And she said, really? And I said, I know you're intellectual. You have college degree or maybe master's degree, and you do not believe in ghosts, but you are afraid of ghosts. And she said, yes, that's true. I don't believe in ghosts, but I am afraid of ghosts. So it's the same thing in our culture. We do not believe in ghosts, but we are very much controlled by ghosts. And so what's the importance of targeting? One, no single church can reach everybody. No. No matter how big the church is, no? Even it's a mega church in the city, they don't reach. So Bible determines the message. I've been saying this, but the target group determines methodology. I know a church plant in Virginia. Their target group are the navies. Okay, they have the biggest naval base in that area, and so he's going to plant a church in this context. So he asked the question, "What kind of music do you listen to?" Okay. And the second question, if you'll be given an hour and 30 minutes for a spiritual activity, what would be the time? Okay, so two things came out. Number one, they listened to what we call the country music. Do you have a country music here? Okay. The guy who is planting, not that he doesn't like country music, he hates it. But he has no choice. The kind of music that he's going to have in the church must be a country music. He likes rock and roll. At the age of 8, when you're a teenager, that's your kind of music throughout your life. Very often, you will change it. So, if it's you like hip hop when you're a teenager, most probably that will be your music. So, he likes rock and roll, not country. But he doesn't have a choice. He must use country music in his church. And the second that came out from the interview of the community was that if they will be given at least an hour, 30 minutes of spiritual activity, what day and what time? Saturday, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So their first service was not Sunday morning, but Saturday, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. When the church grew, then they added a Sunday morning. Again, the target group of people determines your methodology, the shape of your ministry. Okay, the message is the same. Okay, we do not compromise the message. Jesus is still the Son of God. He is the one who will save us by grace alone. Even though Luther made it clear to us, it's still in the Bible. But how we do it, how we preach it, how we do the music, it's all dependent upon our target group. Most important is small churches. By the way, targeting is biblical. I know this is a little bit controversial. But, Paul targeted the uncircumcised, right? Galatians very clear about this. And then Peter targeted those who were circumcised, the Jewish people. And then it is more important to small groups, small church. You know why? Because you don't have a lot of resources, right? You don't have a lot of resources. And oftentimes, when you targeted a multi-racial kind of approach in your ministry, you need a lot of people to do that. Yeah, you need a lot of people. And then we find out also that the head church planter or the lead church planter must be gifted to do that. There's the question, are you gifted to do that? Do you have the ability to communicate the gospel on a multicultural level? No? Of course, everybody is invited to your church, right? I planted the Filipino-American church, but we have American, Caucasian who are attending. We have Black, we have Hispanic, and there was a time that we have at least 2 families that are Chinese. Okay? But they're like Filipinos. They come late, they like to eat a lot, they like conversation. They don't like programs. We have potluck every Sunday in our church. Yeah. No agenda. We'll sit down after worship, about 4:30 in the afternoon up to maybe 8 o'clock. I call it eternal fellowship. And so it's just sit down there and talk and eat. But this is what I found. That's the best context of discipleship. My life to your life, your life to my life, rather than my notes to your notes. Anyway, highest evangelism happens with commonality. No? You speak the same language, you came from the same culture. As you can see, some of the tensions, I will not say tension, but some of the difficulties is going through our cultural here, right? The definition, we're going to pick your mind about that conviction, my brother, because that's very important for us. And so what other terms do you use for core values and so on and so forth? Okay. Planter needs to be a community expert. You need to be a community expert. What's happening in the community. You cannot be aloof to the community. You cannot condemn the community. I know there's a lot of things going on in your community, the sin and the difficulties, but you are there to serve them and to love them. Some extreme church plant will say to you, we don't do any ministry until maybe 2 years because we would like for you to be a community expert. Yeah, I heard people doing that. They don't do any ministry. Yeah, they will just immerse themselves in the community. I like it in the Philippines, as I have told you, we are receiving missionary country. And so when they come, they have a language study for 1 year. And they need to be immersed. And they need to live there in that community and learn the language. And that's good. And lastly, planter needs to evaluate his fitness for a community. When I was starting the ministry, I had a romantic view, especially for the poor, because my dad really taught us to be nationalistic. Somebody asked me if I was hard for me to migrate to America. Yes, it was hard because I grew up in a family wherein nationalism is very strong. That you are created Filipino, you will serve Filipino. That was our family. And for me to migrate to America, that was the hard part because I was ingrained with that. But I would like to serve the poor. That was my romantic view of the ministry. And then the Lord did not because I was going to plant a church in the most poorest community. We have a garbage pile in Manila. The biggest garbage pile wherein 20,000 people live on the garbage. Metro Manila is 13 million people. Just 13 million people, okay? So can you imagine the garbage there? And so it has a smoke 24 hours. We call this Smoky Mountain. Yeah, we call it smoke. When you go there, stay there for 1 hour, your clothes will smell. And so when I go there and then I'll have other commitments, I have to bring new clothes. Because I have to remove them because it's so stinky. And so that was my romantic view, and I have to plant a church there. And then God brought me to California, to San Francisco. And I'm like, why are you doing? I like to go to this poor stricken place. And then when I finally realized, no, that was a good move, God. Because it will be very hard for me because I grew up in a middle class context, and it will be a big jump. Anyway, so then the question is, are you fit to do the ministry in the context of the community that God has called you? Any question? Okay, four key targeting questions, okay? Number 1 is the self-identity question. Where will I fit and potentially have the biggest impact? Okay? As you can see, usually it's not the need, but there always need. Yes?
You went 4 slides ahead, I think.
Oh, thank you, Steve. Is that the one, right? Okay. There is a ghost in this clicker. Anyway. Ooh! Anyway. Key question, where will I fit and potentially have the biggest impact? Do I have a missionary gift? If I do, then cross-cultural ministry can work well. One of our best church planters in our group is that he is really gifted in church planting and as well as language. Yeah, he can learn the language quickly. He loves people. So that's the question, self-identity question. The second question is the mission field question, geographical limits, understanding the culture of the unchurched. You get a map and say, this is the context of my ministry. For example, in our context, when we plant a church, we know the Filipinos will drive 30 minutes away from the church. And so when we come in making sure that we cover areas, we'll say, okay, our next church plant will be 45 minutes away from the church that we have planted already. Because that's what we have found out about Filipinos. They can drive 30 minutes to attend a worship service. And so our churches are scattered in that way. The 6 churches, it's 40 or 30 minutes away from each other because that's the way we have somehow decided in reaching our mission field. Third, mission force question, what kind of churches are already there or here in context? What churches are potential partners who people will help us? This is very unique because when I planted the church, again, as I've said, there were 2 Filipino churches already. One that is highly Baptist group, very conservative, and then the other one is the charismatic group, okay, Pentecostal. And so, since God has called me into that place, I know that I will not compete with them, right? And second, also the second mistake is to copy them. Okay, we are in the same team, right? But also you do not copy them and you do not compete with them. And so we ask ourselves, we attended both service so that I will understand, and then we look at it. And one was that they were very formal in their worship service, and so when we came up, I'm going to show teaching also the worship service, the module. And so when we came up with our worship service, we say it will be very informal. Okay, they have coat and tie when they attend. We say we will dress down. This is the best dress that I have. Okay, in our worship service, they are. Since we have a Roman Catholic background, hierarchical, so the pastor does everything. Okay? So when we came up with our church, I said, the pastor will give many responsibilities. Actually, my first battle in our church plant, in our anniversary, there were 2 who said to me, Pastor June, you should do the benediction. And I said, who said that in the Bible, that the pastor should do the benediction? I don't like to do the benediction. I like my elder to do the benediction. And so we fought for like an hour and saying, why would you have me ask me to do that? I said, I don't like to do the benediction. So you're the pastor, and this is the most important day. It's our anniversary. But you don't. That's not the church that I would like to have. You know that. I like the church wherein everybody is involved, and so that was my first fight in the church. Okay, and it came out from this question: what kind of churches that are already existing in the community? Because I don't want to compete with them. No? And people will come to me and say, we need to be like this. And I say, no, that's not the church that you know what? I know a church down the street. Why don't you go there? That you will be more comfortable there. No? And so, yeah. Anyway, so that's the mission first question. And then the fourth one is the prophetic message. How many churches need to be planted to reach every city, town, and province, country? The Dawn, discipling the whole nation, 1 church for every 1,000 people. The Outreach Canada, 1 church for every 2,000 people. The Nazarene Church, it's 1 church for every 4,000 people. And so there are a lot of potential, right? In planting churches because we have a big population. Unchurched survey. This helps to gather clear information about your specific target community. No, and you can survey unchurched people. No, do it on a personal basis. Ask people, or sometimes you need to go to a website that will give you. Pastor Steve mentioned about our church plant in Eastern Samar, and what we found out is that place is the second most unchurched province. The number 1 is a province that is predominantly Muslim. And second, we found out as well that Eastern Samar is the second poorest province in whole of the Philippines. The first one is also in the Muslim province. And so we know already what kind of ministry we're going to have. We need to plant churches since there are a lot of churches. And second, we need a community base. It means that we need to serve people. And so our pastors, they come up with building fishing boats, because it's facing the Pacific Ocean. We have tutorial for the children. We have like training for women so that they will earn money. And so those things, because it's a poverty-stricken community. The neat thing last time that came news to me was that they asked, our pastor said, from a German preacher, and they asked, how can we help you, Pastor Sam? Here's our situation. There are people who came to know Jesus Christ, but they don't attend our church because they're afraid that one of their family members, when they die, since we are no longer Roman Catholic, we cannot bury them in the public cemetery because we were no longer Roman Catholic. And so our church planter, only church planter can think of this way, okay? They're the most creative people. And he said, why don't you give us money so that we can buy a lot to make it a cemetery? And so they sent money and they bought a land and turned it into a cemetery. After 1 week they bought the land. One member of a Baptist church died and they buried in that cemetery. That was so neat, right? Only God can do that, right? But also, only church planting can do that. To think creatively outside the box, right? And that was so neat for me to see that. We are in the business of dedicating children and burying people. So it covers the whole aspect of life, right? From birth to death. We are ministering to them. Okay, so a sample of profile person. This is from Rick Warren's church. Again, he's targeting the rich people. So here is how he said, the study that came out from their community survey. He is well educated. He likes contemporary music. He likes his job. He thinks he is enjoying life more than he did 5 years ago. He likes where he lives. Health and fitness are high priorities for him and his family. He'd rather be a large group than a small one. He is self-satisfied and smug about his station in life. He prefers casual, informal over the formal. He's skeptical of organized religion, and he's extended in both time and money. So first year in my church plant, I made a study and then come up with this. This is a 5-year process. I've been changing it from that time wherein I wrote the profile of the Filipino American in America. We need time and safe environment to explore our faith issues. Don't rush us. Because of the Roman Catholic background. We have been raised in our church, but we don't know what to expect in your church, and that scares us a little bit. A couple in our praise and worship invited their friend, and he was sitting with his friends, this newcomer in the church. When the praise and worship time came, of course they went up like this one, right? So he was left. The visitor was left. You know what he said to his friends? He said, why did you abandon? We are in the same room. Okay? We are in the same room. But that is how we felt. Okay? There is a survey that says, Barna Group says that 78% of the newcomers in the church make a decision already whether they will come back to your church even before the pastor speaks. So we need to make our worship service and our church to be friendly to newcomers. No, and so that was an eye-opener for me. I mean, because the guy felt that way, even though we are in the same room. Okay, the best sometimes is the suggestion I have: go to the most weird church in your city and see how you feel. Yeah. No? So that's what I have done in my church. I went to a Jewish temple. It was weird. Yeah. And I said, and then I attended the cultic church in our place. It was weird, to be honest with you. No? They closed the door, like this worship service at 5 o'clock, close the door. Like it's almost like every person should be there before the worship service starts. We don't do that in our church, right? We open our church. But in that cultic, they close the door. It's almost like, now we captured you. So that you will feel. one of the good things is that bring your people and then you walk around the worship service. Like this one, I like the feel of this, right? There is a informality in this context, right? When you walk in, there is food. So coffee smells good, right? When they come in, right? No? There's no ghost in this room. You know that? So, okay. We're open to spiritual discussion and willing to check out your church. Don't preach at us. We value tolerance and acceptance. We cannot stand judgmental people. Religion and faith are deeply personal issues to us. You have to earn the right to talk to us about this issue. We want to make a difference in our world. We want a worthwhile cause to give ourselves to. Kurt mentioned about this, the Japanese. You cannot invite them to spiritual activities, but they will give money when it is something that is worth giving to. And the Filipinos are like that. They will not come to our church because the Roman Catholic priest said that they will go to hell if they will attend another worship service. But they will give money when there is earthquake in the Philippines or whatever help that they could. We are highly relational. Our friends are very important to us. Spend long hours visiting friends. We have good jobs, but they are just a means to an end. We work to live, not to live to work. We want to experience God for ourselves, not just hear someone talk about Him. So it's very what do you call this? When we teach Bible study, it's not my teaching to you, but it's question and answer so that it's more interactive. We are deeply spiritual, but we are skeptical of other organized religion. We value participation. We don't want to be just passive observers. We are very materialistic. Oh, the Filipinos in America, because of the American dream, they are very, very materialistic. One time, as I've told you, we dedicate cars. It was Christmas, and then dedicate cars, and then there were a lot of visitors, and I announced it. By the way, after service, our members, 2 members bought new cars. We're going to dedicate, and then just right after the service, like 3 visitors approached me. So, Pastor June, we just bought new cars. Can you dedicate them as well? So I had like 6 new cars in front of the church, and like I was looking at it, and it's like Mercedes, very expensive cars. No? And I was looking at it and so dedicated it to the Lord. So, that was the time when I realized, these people are so materialistic. So you can buy like maybe a second-hand car, but they will buy a new one, just to emphasize that they made it already. They are looking for a place to belong. We want to belong. We want to be loved, accepted, even we don't believe what you believe. We have there's a church that we rented, and it says, belonging, believing, and then behaving. Okay? Belonging, believing, behaving. It means that you have to belong first, and then you must believe, and then your behavior will change. And I like it because oftentimes we emphasize first the behaving. Like a friend of mine, he was able to reach a gang group, very violent people, criminals, new believers, so they smoke cigarettes in the parking lot. It almost split the church because members saying, why come they are smoking? And the pastor said, these people, these are murderers. These are criminals. Smoking is the least, okay? Why don't you give them time before? So people like right away, they would like for them to behave like Christians, okay? So we say they belong first, okay? And then you change their belief. All actions, significant actions, can only be changed when their beliefs are changed, okay? So don't focus on the behavior if you will not going to change the belief. Change the belief, then actions will change and the behavior will change. We highly value family and education of our children. We send financial help to our family and church back home. And we are not politically active. They don't vote, even though they are citizens. Yeah, they don't know local politics, regional politics. They know the president, it's Trump now, that's all. And we talk more about politics back home than politics in the States. Okay, so any question about this? How am I doing with time? That. It's okay. Yes. Sir.
You speak about belonging, believing, and behaving. Now, where do these people belong?
That is a slogan.
Fellowship,
Yeah. That we.
Church of Christ.
No, we would like for them to have a sense of belonging in the church that when they come, we don't want to put a lot of barriers and say, we would like for you to belong. You're raising your hand?
Yeah, because I think you're talking about our church.
No, I'm talking about the church that we rented the last one.
They did?
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay. Our church had a motto, and it said, our church is a faith community where people can belong before they believe. Now, that doesn't mean they're members of the church and recognized as believers or equal to believers, but they can belong in that they can be there and be welcomed and be valued and be treated like people rather than inferior. And so what that did was enable our church to have 25% regularly in the church that were not yet Christians. They were from the kind of the broken part of society, and they were there learning and experiencing the worship and eating with us, and we were able to lead many people to Christ that way. So we didn't say, you can come, but you're not part of us yet until you believe. We didn't do that. So they were welcome. But they couldn't be members and have the rights of membership, but they belonged anyway. Relationally, they belonged.
Did it answer your question?
Yeah.
Good.
But it is very important that it is like that.
Yes.
We are often tempted to say, well, you're there, you belong, you vote, you decide who the pastor will be, the elders will be.
Exactly. That would be very bad.
Okay. We're good? Okay. So in the map, question is, who are the people that you like, where you live and serve? What are people like where you live and serve? What are their values? What are their characteristic aspirations?
What are the questions that you ask about the group or
When I made this study,
the group that you are studying? Just observe over time, or there are specific questions that you try to answer to yourself? Or is there a grid that you...
50% of this came from observation, reading articles. 50% came from living with them as well. So,
If someone is not very observant,
yeah, that.
it's not easy to read your own culture because you don't recognize your own.
Yeah. And that's why you need to withdraw from your culture and look at it from an outsider and say,
I think you get outside help.
Ask missionaries.
Yeah, ask missionaries to help you. There's a table over there.
For example, we have a very lively music, and missionaries will tell us there is no a lot of intelligence in your worship. It's all about feelings. And I said, you know why? Because we've been colonized, we've been slave, and the only free expression we have is music. And so your music here, very emotional, that appeals to me. That appeals to us because that's where we express ourselves. And it's also very celebrative because that's where we express ourselves as our freedom. So now I said, you understand that theology is not the big emphasis in our music. It's feeling. It's expression. So in your context, You need to ask these questions. That's why it's very important. Now, if you are not trained to do this, I think that's the question. If you are not trained to do this, then I think, again, as I've said, start opening your mind, asking help from people. But I agree with you. That it's so hard to observe your own culture because you're part of it. It's almost like yeah.
That's why you have to define questions ahead of time that you're going to ask. For us, often to go to a coffee shop and just talk to people and say, can I ask you a few questions about things that you see in this community, and just start asking some questions, writing down. You start to get patterns. You can also just do some demographic studies by going online and getting information. Are they rich? Are they middle class? Are they poor? What are the levels of crime, drug addiction, whatever. In our town, there's a lot of homelessness, increasing amount of homelessness. And so it was nice to know that. And that's really why we established our congregation where we did, so we could be close to them and be engaged with them. Now, not a lot of churches will have that core value and choose to be there, but this church chose to be there because it had a core value of having compassion-based evangelism. And so you find out, you can do it. I don't know what in our country you can check with the statistics at the school, and you find a lot of you find out what the children are like, and that's kind of what the parents are like too. So you find out characteristics. Just many ways.
Sometimes we call it a non-relational or non-context kind of statistics wherein you go to the website and find out. But sometimes also it's very helpful. If you're going to plunge in the community, you need to be very, very present in the community. You cannot spend 50 or less, more of that of your time in the office. You need to be out there. You need to be out there to know what the people. Yes, Tomas.
There are big differences between the large of the city.
Yeah.
And thinking about the target group, and of course about rural territory, small town, bigger town, metropolitan area.
Yeah.
I believe there is several very important questions. One is what is the most outreach group? If I am missionary to this group. The other very important question is who is given to us already, who is the most open in this town, where the doors are already open.
Yeah.
So this idea of social group and picture of people of peace, people who somehow are open to relationship, and so sometimes it's more like a given type than picked. It is not planning in the beginning, but recognize whom the Lord is giving us. Yeah, just comments.
Yeah.
Well, what we're saying is that you hold your maybe beliefs or understanding lightly, so that it will not color the shape and your approach of ministry. I'm just saying that if this is the target group of people, if you want to really reach them, very relevant, then try to understand them. You're raising your hands, Milan. Yes.
It's a comment and a question.
Okay, sure.
We just had a few weeks ago kind of a lecture about Generation Z. All these generations that are coming after each other, and there was a lecture for basically parents of the teenagers. And you saw kind of a bunch of parents who were semi-desperate about the fact that they, as the parents, don't understand their own teenagers. And so, and we kind of need to be more and more ready and try to understand what's happening in this generation Z and now generation Alpha, I think it's called the next one, that how they react in the virtual reality and all these things, because we as the generation who believe in institutions, in hard work, in all of those, are trying to solve issues with our teenagers with our means, and we want to even reach the teenagers and kids with our means, our understanding, and I'm a little bit afraid that we will need to kind of try to understand more and more how to reach these next generations, because we are trying our best with our tools, kind of.
That's not a unique situation. I think in every culture there is a generational gap. I mean, especially with the internet and everything, phone. I mean, I never had the phone when I was in the Philippines, cell phone. It's only here, I mean, in America. Never had a credit card, only in America. But our children are growing up with this. So we need to listen, right? There's a very popular book in the States. The title is "We Will Listen to You If You Stop Talking to Us." That's kind of about the parents. If you shut your mouth, we listen to you, and it's like okay. But it's very important. It's very important to know these people, and then you shape your ministry. You create ministries that will be relevant to them. But I think non-negotiable there is, of course, the authenticity. You need to be authentic, right, in your relationship with them. No, that's very important. Okay? No more questions? I see it's 11:44, so is there one lecture rep, right, before we go to lunch?
I think it's okay, I'll just go ahead and we'll start the next one, so we'll end on time, 12:20 for lunch. But I'll just split my session. Does that make sense? Okay. We won't break now.
Yeah.